Right, thank you. My name is Joe. Everybody calls me JoeBot, like the robot. I am the head of product at Airbnb. I joined as the third engineer when we were still in an apartment in Soma. And things have grown a little bit since then. So in 2009, we were kind of a few peppers all around the world, a little bit in Paris. In 2010, you start seeing us expand a little bit. In 2011, you see us start to really get into Europe. 2012, you see us get into really deep into Europe, Latin America, Asia, and it's just kind of been keeping going from there. Today, we have about 600,000 listings in 34,000 cities and 192 countries. And we're growing and sharing like never before. So here is a graph of our global growth in terms of number of guests that we've served. So since we've started, we've served 11 million guests. When we started 2013, we had served 4 million guests. By the end of 2013, we had served 10 million guests. So we've actually done the majority of our business just last year. But this is going to be the story about Airbnb photography, how we leveraged professional photography, where we send a professional photographer to your home for free to shoot the listing and show it in its best light. So the story actually begins here in 2009 when the founders of Airbnb were in Y Combinator. And they're in Y Combinator, and Paul Graham, in his infinite wisdom, gives them this advice. Go to where your users are. You know, your early users, they're in New York, but you're here in San Francisco. Why are you here in San Francisco? He repeats this a few times until eventually the founders get it, they hop on a plane, they go to New York, and they go meet with their customers. That is what New York looks like today in terms of Airbnb listings, but this is what it looked like in 2009. Just a few listings here and there. They went for a weekend, they went and sat down with their hosts, they sat down with their customers and really tried to understand what are the main problems that our hosts are having. And they would go help them edit their descriptions, they'd write new titles. And they had another insight, which was to do things that don't scale. They didn't let big ideas sort of edit their thinking. And I think that's probably the one takeaway from that lesson is like, don't edit your thinking because you don't know how to scale something. And what they did is they went and they saw this photo wasn't very attractive. They went and rented a professional camera for the weekend and turned this photo into that photo, which really highlighted the listing in its best possible light. So they started establishing some hypotheses because they noticed that that listing was starting to get a little bit more business than the other ones. And one of the hypotheses was, if you get professional photographs, you'll get more business. The other hypothesis was, hosts would be really excited to get this, especially for free. So what they did is they built a concierge version. And what does that mean? Well, there's a host, there's a website, and there's a photographer. They just got a concierge in between that sort of stitched it all together. So the concierge recruits the photographer, talks to the host, connects them, uploads the photos to the website on the host's behalf, and takes care of all the work. And then they started measuring. And their hypotheses ended up being true, that professionally photographed listings were getting 2 to 3 times as much business because they were showing the listing in a so much better light. And also, hosts were super, super excited to receive the offer when they got it. So that brings us to about here. End of 2010, I've been with the company for more than 6 months as an engineer. We have about 20 photographers in our system. They come to me and they say, can you scale this? Can you build this? So the first thing I did was I just looked at the system. I said, this is actually not a bad idea. What if we just replace the concierge with an automated system? So I did that. And the other thing I noted, though, is that we still need somebody to sort of like operate the system. Someone to sit between the photographer and the system, because you have to keep onboarding photographers, making sure they get paid, making sure there's no problems. It was actually fairly easy to build because we had a lot of the components, just had to stitch them together, like authentication, geocoding, user profiles, photo uploading, email notification, all that kind of existed. And we already had someone who was sort of the concierge. We just sort of shifted them to an operator role, and their job changed a little bit. Now they're doing email marketing, now they're doing recruiting, now they're doing quality control and reviewing shoots and providing support. So in our first month, when we launched this, we actually get about 1,000 shoots that month, which was really awesome. We were really excited about that. And then the next month happened, we actually did not do as well as the month before. And we started scratching our heads about this and wondering, why is that? And then it was time to really measure again. So if I actually step back, one of the first things that I do is even today with big projects is I always build a dashboard. Because a dashboard forces you to really have ultra clear goals, and it forces you to have really clear communication across the entire company. And so in this case, because we're paying for free photography, we had a budget, and so we had a goal that was around how many shoots could we accomplish with this budget. But then we also had to start on the dashboard diving into much deeper data. So what was the host email conversion like? Well, it turned out it was pretty high. What was the photo shoot turnaround? Because maybe we weren't shooting as much because photographers were taking a long time. That wasn't the case either. The photographer decline rate, also not high. I mean, photographers were not declining shoots. What we did notice was that we weren't covering very many listings because we only had photographers in a certain amount of areas. And then we dug deeper and realized that we were not hiring photographers fast enough. And when we dug even deeper into that, we realized it was because our operator was spending all their time cutting manual checks for the 1,000 shoots that was done the previous month and was not actually spending time recruiting photographers. So if there's only a way that we could actually automate payments, but it turns out we already have that ability in our system, so we actually just hooked that up to our photography system and started paying photographers out through the same mechanism that we pay our hosts. And once we did that, we could hire a lot more. And we saw the next month we went back to normal and started growing our shoots. And then we kept iterating. For the next couple of months, we kept making improvements, kept making tweaks to little tiny optimizations that kept our shoots growing. And then everyone's really excited about this inside the company. The founder's like, this is great, let's change all the requirements. And then that ended up breaking the site. So the first thing that came up, this was actually not that bad. Let's watermark all of our images. And this actually has a double whammy effect. The first thing is that it gives trust to our guests that, hey, actually someone's been to this property. The second thing is that it prevents these images from getting stolen and getting used else on other sites. The next thing that happened, this one was really tough, was make sure the original is greater than 12 megapixels. Before we had just told photographers, well, hey, just upload a high-res photo. All of a sudden now we're telling photographers upload these really big photos, and that completely broke all of our infrastructure because it's a lot harder to send a stream of very, very large images from anywhere in the world. And then also all the processing that has to be done on all the different image sizes. So that was a challenge. We broke it, but we fixed it. And this is my favorite part was, back in the day, it seems crazy to me now, but we actually allowed listings on our site without photos. They never got booked, but we allowed them. They weren't really enthusiastic hosts, if you will. So we actually pushed forward a new policy where we had a photographer where we started turning off listings and saying, hey, sorry, you can't be on Airbnb without a photo, but click this button and we'll send a free photographer to your home. And I love that because it took these sort of lapsed users and completely reactivated them with a tool that helped them get over the hurdle that they probably lapsed, the reason they lapsed in the first place. And once we did that, we actually saw a tremendous amount of growth in our shoots. And so then we started thinking about, okay, well, how can we scale that out, that kind of concept out? And so we started building lots of internal tools to help us with that. This is a snapshot, one of our internal tools that looks, you can go look at anywhere in the world, and you could see where are all the new listings that came up without photos, and those are in pink, over a 7-day period. So it was a 7-day period where these were all the listings in London that were created that didn't have photos, thus couldn't go live. And if you look carefully, you see little cameras, which is where the photographers are. So we look for patterns where we saw a clump of listings without photos and no photographer. And we just go hyper-locally find a photographer to service that area. And the whole time we're also iterating on quality. So every shoot we do is reviewed. And that's always been the case. But a lot of times we're getting the same feedback, getting the same types of photos to different photographers. We had to give the same feedback. So, hey, the one on the left is underexposed. We give some feedback. They send us back the correct photo on the right, which has the right exposure. And same with being overexposed, or same with too much contrast. And what we ended up doing is creating a style guide that we use to onboard photographers so we can maintain consistency across the photo brand. This is what it means to have a photo on on our listings. And every time there's a problem, it doesn't have to get very vague when we give the sort of feedback to the photographer. We're able to actually give them examples of how to do it right, and also tutorials on how to get their camera to do the right thing. And then we also had to scale our operations team. So we needed more recruiters and more reviewers because that ended up still being the bottleneck. And as we started doing that, we started seeing our growth really, really spike. And now we're shooting more per month than was our original budget for the entire year. And one thing I really love about the photographs is that they really go well with the unique value proposition of Airbnb. Airbnb is about extremely unique experiences, things you can't get anywhere in the world, and photography is like a perfect complement to that. And so, whether it be this penthouse loft in Sao Paulo, this tree house in Italy, this bus in Ibiza, this art house in Bali, this loft in Paris, this sea cottage in Sweden, ski cabin in Iceland, this yacht in Spain, or this warehouse in London, we can send our photographers out anywhere in the world and capture something really unique. You may not book this warehouse in London, but it does create this very aspirational brand that makes people want to book something else. So to date, we've shot in 8,500 cities with over 200,000 shoots and 3.3 million photos. I can't prove this, but I think we may have one of the biggest internal home photo collection in the world. If not now, we certainly will at some point. So it really comes back to going and meeting your users and not editing yourself and doing things that don't scale. Like if we had gone the original days and talked to our customers and thought about scaling this to 200,000 shoots, we never would have done anything. So it's all about going, understanding your pain points of your customers, and then doing things that don't scale, and then finding a way for it to scale down the road. So, thank you. Okay, I can take some questions. Yeah.
I'm an Airbnb host.
Oh, great, thank you.
So one of the things about and for me and thinking about this ecosystem is developer program for hosts. Things like tax is a nightmare. There's a million. Are you guys planning to open APIs to provide other tools like photographs for hosts?
We have not yet opened up any APIs for hosts. It's not out of the question of the future, but we'll consider it.
I'm an Airbnb guest.
Oh, thank you.
So, do you think that the photo is the main reason for that growth after 2009?
Oh, so the question is the photo the main reason for the growth after 2009? I don't think it's the only reason for the growth after 2009. I think it helps differentiate our brand and it really helps get people excited about travel. But most of our growth has been organic, word of mouth, and I think that part of why that works for us is that we all talk about travel. Like the last trip we take, we're always talking about it. After Christmas break, everybody's like, well, what did you do? Where'd you go? And then people talk about it. And if we're creating unique experiences, people are talking about that. Then they come to Airbnb and then they're hit with this, beautiful photography, beautiful brand, and it doesn't take much to get them excited about staying. So it's probably a combination of things, but I think photography tremendously helped.
Yeah. Have you tried something like Google Street View inside the rooms that you could move and see 3D models or whatever? Does it make any sense? Any difference?
We've explored stuff like that. We've explored stuff like video. It might make sense. It's just not something that we've done yet. I think the photo tends to do a pretty good job. People can share them easily. Like it's pretty cross-platform, but we're not opposed to looking at stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm an Airbnb host here.
Awesome.
Have you guys tried with image filters like when you upload the image? Because sometimes the only problem with image is just the light.
So we have that whole style guide I showed you. One thing we want to be really careful of is that we show the listing, we put its best foot forward, but we also show it in a very accurate way. So we're very careful to make sure that people don't go crazy on HDR and go crazy on all these things that make the place not look like it does in real life. So we'd have to be really careful with any kind of filters. Yeah.
Can you comment a bit on the exploration of how long it takes to return the cost of all these photographs?
I can't really comment too much on that. But do the math. I mean, like, when you travel, like, how much are you? I mean, they're expensive once a year type items, and I mean, I'm sure that if we even asked hosts to pay for it, they would, because they would tremendously make that money back. Yeah.
So I thought it was sort of interesting. You start saying, oh, do things that don't scale, but then you talk about how it ended up making it scale. Do you see a point where maybe won't be able to hire photographers anymore, or is that part of the plan?
Yeah, I don't see a point where we can't hire photographers, and then even for very, very special listings like that are really remote, if they're special enough, we'll actually fly a photographer out there. Yeah, and in terms of things that don't scale, I mean, my main point is just don't edit your thinking early on. If something really, really works and provides value, then brainstorm and find a way. And I think I worry that too many times I see startups like not do something because they can't imagine how to do it. Doesn't mean a solution doesn't exist. Yeah.
How did you originally decide which hosts would provide photographs?
We offered it to any of them. Yeah, any hosts. And I think that, and on top of that, conventional wisdom may say don't offer it to the people who don't have photos or really bad hosts because they haven't gone over the hurdle. And actually, I thought that was a huge opportunity for us to give it to lapsed users. I mean, if you think about behavior change. Giving people a tool to get over the behavior they're not doing to make it easier is a great way to turn them into active hosts. Yeah.
Do you ever see a point where not having professional photography would make sense, where it make it seem more organic and not as professionally developed?
Well, I mean, I think the majority of our photos today are not professional. I think that I don't see a point where nice photography won't matter. I mean, I think the human eye really appreciates the aesthetic of that. So I don't. I mean, the thing is, everything we offer is so unique to begin with. It's not like we're taking a professional photo of the same hotel room over and over again. Everything is already fairly organic in the sense that it's all unique. So probably not. Yeah, I think it really just depends on the business. I mean, I think it depends on. I think about the risk that the customer is taking. If this is one family's vacation for, once a year, then I think they're going to want to do homework and want to be assured this place exists and assured that every little nook and cranny is understood. And I think that might be a different use case than something where it's okay to just have a general idea of the listing. Cool, thank you.